a phenomenal show lined up for you tonight. I am joined by Chucky Danger, who is a paranormal researcher, enthusiast. He's been actually teaching me a lot of stuff through the ages that I've known the guy. He's been an incredible member of the community. He's a podcaster himself. He appears on a lot of other podcasts, so I wrapped him into making an appearance here with us today. So we're going to get into a whole bunch of ideas surrounding some of the nature of the paranormal, and I think some of this is really going to cook your bacon, so buckle up and stay tuned. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Portal Podcast. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you all for joining us, and special thank you goes out to all of you who continue to support the podcast and continue to spread the word. Always remember, if any of you out there have experiences of your own that you'd like to share, feel free to email me at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. Again, paranormalportalradio@gmail.com, and you too could be a guest on the show. Chucky, welcome to the show, brother.
Good to talk to you, Brent. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. Thanks, man, for making this happen. So
not just a chat.
You've been on the show before. Yeah, it's not.
Up.
Yeah, that's right. Chucky's also a mod in our chat and has been a dear friend for a long time now. He also helps take care of the Discord community that we have. But you man. Let me get into the microphone a little better here. I have to do some editing, but you've been on the show before, and we talked about several of your encounters and such. But I've always been really impressed by your ability to think about this phenomenon and come up with ideas and such, and as to the nature of it, because I think the big thing about this stuff is we just don't really know what's going on, but. You know, is that just part of your nature? Are you just one of those guys that likes to, well, how does this work? Is that who you are, or is this just pretty specific?
Exactly. Curiosity is one of my greatest strengths and one of my greatest weaknesses. Because if you can't find the answer, it drives you nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And for me too. Now, I know you've got experiences as well, so I think in a lot of ways we're both very kindred spirits in that it's one thing to have experiences, but then it becomes, what the hell just happened? What is this? Because this isn't supposed to happen. This stuff isn't supposed to occur. This isn't part of our traditional thinking. And it really leads you on a trail of inquiry, right?
Yeah, you fall down those rabbit holes and it leads you to more questions than you have answers most of the time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we did talk about all my experiences on the previous time we recorded. Mm-hmm. I've since had another Sasquatch experience.
Really?
I have.
Okay.
Not last year, but the year before that. I was out. Actually, it was last year. I was sighting in my 30-06. I just bought a brand new scope for my rifle. This is in October. And I went out to a empty cut block about 10, 11 in the morning, after hunters would have a fair shot at getting whatever deer might be out in the field. And I set up a target, and I'm sighting in my rifle. And I happened to be listening to Sasquatch Chronicles at the time because I had my earbuds in over my hearing protection.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, I've shot like 10, 15 rounds downrange. So that's loud. 30-06 isn't a quiet gun.
Yeah.
And at the top of the hill, there's a big old cedar tree that just starts whipping back and forth.
Oh.
Like, it didn't make any sense. There's no wind, and I don't know an animal that would come into the area someone's shooting a gun like that, nor a person, but also the feat of strength that would take to shake the tree the manner in which it was doing was phenomenal.
Oh, wow. We're talking like a mature tree?
This is like an 8 to 9 inch in diameter cedar tree.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I actually went back the following spring. So I guess it wouldn't have been last fall. It was the year before.
Okay.
But I went back the following spring to go take pictures of the tree. So I have those posted to my Instagram. And, you know, I saw how big around that tree was. And at the base of the tree, there was a bunch of cedarlings. So even if I did climb to the top of the hill, I still wouldn't have seen what was at the base of that tree because it was so brushed in.
Oh, okay.
But as I'm investigating around this tree, I go a little bit north from where this tree was, and there's a rotten cedar stump that has been turned into a moose bed because the deer kind of like that feel underneath their feet. And in this moose bed, I noticed there's a humanoid footprint.
Oh.
But since the substrate is so terrible,
right,
it was really hard to see. But I tried to take good photos of it, but they didn't turn out so great.
Sure, yeah.
But it was about a 14-inch long track.
Oh, okay.
And right where I saw that tree whipping back and forth. So it very well could have even been the same individual doing that. And this is the exact same location where I had all my previous encounters before.
And you keep going back.
I keep going back.
Wow. Is that it? I mean, you and I, of course, have talked through the years about this, but what is your take on these things in terms of Bigfoot? Are they, I don't know, I guess, are they, because there's two main schools of thought. Look, you know, well, there's three. They're good, they're possibly not good, and then they're both. What's your take on them?
I would say it really depends on the situation. I mean, if it wanted to be really hostile with me in that situation, it could have been. I mean, I was wearing hearing protection. It could have come up behind me and popped my head off like a daisy.
Sure. Right. Yeah, that's true.
It didn't. It chose a non-violent approach just to wave a tree that would be in my line of sight. And that was enough. Even though I was holding the gun, I didn't feel comfortable going up to the top of that hill.
No.
It wasn't worth it. So.
Right. I think that's a big
I got
thing.
the message.
What was the message exactly? Get out.
Pack up and go home.
Yeah, it seems that would be my take for it too. It's just like, obviously they didn't want you there, at least then. But I got to give you a lot of credit because so many times we hear stories of people that have encounters and it kills things for them. It kills, like, lifelong hunting passions have died in a moment when people have seen these things, you know, whatever they are, these beings. And yet you're like, let's go back up there, see if I can find something else. Do you expect that potential every time you're in that area, or did you before this second experience?
I've always kind of had it at the back of my mind, but,
sure,
you know, I'm constantly looking for footprints.
Okay.
And, it's the best way to know what's in the area.
Sure.
Checking out mud puddles. I mean, especially being a hunter, I'm always looking for deer track and moose tracks and, you know, whatever else might be around. And so I'm always looking for the little signs, just being a hunter. So you can go out beside the cut blocks and you can look at the willow trees and you can see the browse levels at which the deer will feed at. Oh. And then you can look above that and you can see where the moose feed, right? It's a different height level because they're much different sizes.
Yeah.
And then I started noticing above the moose browse, there's more branches that have been stripped off, but not like they've been chewed on, like they've been stripped with a hand. like absolutely bare branches, way up high, like 8 to 10 feet up, and not nibbled on.
Oh.
So I definitely got the feeling that was feeding sign from them.
Sure.
And the willow actually works kind of like a natural Tylenol from what I've been told.
Right. Yep.
So it would help with headaches and such.
Yeah, willow bark, I think, is the precursor to aspirin, is what it is. Yep.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Huh.
And so I really started thinking about gifting sites and such too. Mm-hmm. And then in my pursuit of trying to figure out what these things are, we get all these stories about the glowing red eyes or the eye shine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's not a heck of a lot of mammals in the world that will have that red eye shine.
Right.
It doesn't really fit scientific boxes. Tree kangaroos will actually have the red eye shine.
Oh.
So that's a mammal that will actually have that illumination when you put the light on it.
Okay.
But eye shine is mostly used for nocturnal eyesight. So I started thinking, well, what light spectrum are they picking up that they might be using to see that well during the night?
Okay.
And it led me into this huge snowballing study that I'm involved with in my personal life that I think Sasquatch sees in the ultraviolet spectrum.
Wow.
Because so many other animals that are nocturnal, actually the whole world, sees in ultraviolet and expresses different ways of communication and the knowledge of food availability as well.
Okay.
So as I looked into this, it started with owls because they're definitely nocturnal.
Mm-hmm.
You can take an owl from 3 different towns, different regions, close by, and you can spread out their wings and hit them with an ultraviolet flashlight. The wing patterns, the bands of feathers coming down will fluoresce in different patterns, short and long, depending on the region in which they come from.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So as they're flying, they're able to identify each other just by their individual fluorescence marks. And us as humans, we can't see that natively. We need special tools. And so most of the time, we don't know this communication is even happening.
Right.
So it got me pondering, well, maybe Sasquatch sees like that too.
Sure.
What else in nature is fluorescing like this? So I bought a UV flashlight. And as I'm walking around, even just outside my house, so many plants will fluoresce. Like you can go up to a fir tree and the little lichens that grow on the side of the tree
Sure.
that are dull gray and green.
Yes. Yep.
When you hit them with the UV flashlight, they're bright orange.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. Huh.
So the expression of color is dramatic.
Huh. You know that go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Every living cell on this planet emits ultraviolet light.
Sure. Okay.
Even ourselves. So as we sit here living and breathing, we are emitting ultraviolet light. We just don't have the capability of really seeing it. It's not in a frequency that is easily captured.
That's interesting.
Huh. Our bones actually work like LEDs.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And we emit a brown-red light from our bones.
Well, that's absolutely fascinating. you may really be onto something, because so many times hunters talk about being absolutely hidden. I mean, they're all camouflaged. They're, in a blind, and they're sitting there and they'll be seeing something like a Sasquatch, and they'll, it'll be low light conditions. Usually most sightings are in that dusk dawn, in that very dark, almost light phase. Mm-hmm. And the Sasquatch turn as if they're just like a beacon, and they're recognized instantly. And it's kind of a baffling of the imagination, because we look at things through our own spectrum. It's like, well, God, how did it see that person? Because many times people will be like, even looking through a scope at a Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and, I'm using both terms. I don't think that's what they're called, but anyway, I didn't mean to throw out both terms, but they are instantly recognized. It's like the Sasquatch. It's almost, I was considering that there's a telepathic element to this too, but they turn and they zero in an instant on where these people are. When they're, even in brush and cover, they are still able to be seen. And if what you're saying is true, then perhaps the way that they're receiving and filtering that light is quite a bit different from ours, so that yes, our fabrics and stuff would not look like foliage, and, the camo and the ghillie suit is all artificial fabrics and stuff, and it's not actual, greenery and such. So that might stick out like a sore thumb.
It would really depend on the fabric. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. And even I wear a lot of high visibility clothing for work.
Sure.
If you happen to mix your load with your camouflage, you're going to have high vis fabric all over your camouflage. And, you'll see these bright yellow fibers or orange that really stick out. So there's a lot of things that in the mundane of the human existence, mm-hmm. we don't consider.
Sure.
But okay, here's how humans work. That'll really make it make sense. Why Sasquatch might tune in like that.
Okay.
Imagine a human is like a cuttlefish.
Sure.
Every little emotion that you put out, every intention that you do, changes your color and pattern that you're emitting. Mm-hmm. So as you see a cuttlefish that's hunting or finding a mate, or it's going into hiding or whatnot, it changes its color and its pattern.
Okay.
We do the same thing on the inside. We just can't see that the same way. Mm. So energy follows intentions, right?
Sure. Yeah, that's really interesting.
When you're in a shock state of seeing these Sasquatch, I'm sure we're emitting all kinds of color that we just don't see.
Brown being probably the most pronounced.
Yeah, along with a following smell.
I'm just saying, I think I would, I've often wondered, what would that be like? And it's got to be one of the most horrifying experiences ever, to just be walking in out from a tree, steps an 8-foot plus huge thing, that you don't know what to do with it. It's like, oh my God. And, my hat's off to anybody that can look at that and go, oh, and not flee in absolute terror. But crazy. I think that's fascinating, Chucky. I think you might really be onto something, because that really would answer some of those questions. Like, like I stated, that they just zero in on people in a heartbeat. And maybe it does have to do with the fabrics and possibly the emotion, as you're talking about. But I would imagine that, if it was in more light conditions, that's harder to understand, because of course during the daylight, the world is flooded with UV, light from the sun. And so maybe it wouldn't be as profound as it would be.
Well, however, in that case, the best way to understand how the UV world works is to take a step back from the cryptid and start looking at the everyday animals that use it.
Okay.
Which is mostly birds and insects, mm-hmm. but everything seems to have a capability of some of it. Flowers, for instance, will express UV that we can't see. Oh. This is a this is a good example. So a flower actually has the ability to hear frequency. They're finding out that flowers can emit their own tune that we can't hear. Like, have you seen the scientists that hook up these little cables to flowers and they can actually produce music on a synthesizer?
Yeah, I'm vaguely familiar with that. I know I've bumped into it at least through the years.
It's pretty nifty. So they can actually hear the humming of bees. So if they know a beehive is, say, northeast, the flower heads will turn northeast. And a flower holds a negative charge. A bee holds a positive charge.
Oh.
So as the bee is coming towards the flower, it senses that negative charge,
mm-hmm.
and it can hear the flower because it's talking to it as well. And not only that, but on the flower petals themselves, there will be these special runways that the bee will be able to see that we can't. So imagine a daisy. It's just like a pure white flower.
Sure.
With the yellow center. But along those white petals, there'll be a dark purplish strip, like a runway, basically.
Huh.
And so the bees will be attracted to that, land on the flower, they exchange a proton and electron. So the bee actually magnetizes the pollen to its back legs, gets its drink of nectar, and leaves for the next flower. However, it then gave the flower a positive charge. So when the next bee comes by, it knows not to pollinate that flower specifically because it's not holding the negative charge anymore.
Wow. Doesn't that just fry your bacon? I mean, literally, just to think about the intricacies that are involved in something as simple as a pollinating exchange. You know, that symbiosis, but there's so many levels to it that
many.
We just didn't know.
Many. Yeah. And here, Doug Hychek did a study with Ultraviolet.
Okay.
He was studying grizzly bears and caribou up in the north.
Mm-hmm.
And what he found was they can see in the ultraviolet as well. And how they use it is to actually see the protein and sugar content in plants.
Huh.
So a nutritious plant will actually fluoresce red. So when you see a bear munching in a meadow and it wanders off 20 yards from where it was just sitting and goes to eat the next plants over there instead of just eating the plant right beside the one that was just eating, it's because it can see the most bang for its buck value in the food, and it's not wasting its time digesting unnutritious food.
Wow. See, I told you that you're teaching me stuff all the time. I had never heard any of this, but I didn't know Doug was doing that. Doug is an incredible guy, and he's done huge things for the cryptid community. Just a fascinating guy.
His UV application to Sasquatch is mostly involved with handprints.
Mm-hmm.
So he's looking for the hand oils as he tries to bait like a volleyball out in a field and have the Sasquatch play with it.
Mm-hmm.
And while they touch that, they leave the hand oil, which is called sebum.
Mm-hmm.
And just like any good forensics, you can see those handprints.
Sure.
And then you can collect that for DNA.
Oh, fascinating. Yeah.
So it's pretty nifty. Like if you take a UV flashlight to your house, it's going to look like handprints everywhere.
I know. I know I washed that window.
You thought you did.
Yeah, I thought you did. Yeah, that's probably why I don't bring UV lights with me wherever I go, especially when I'm going to a hotel. It's like,
oh God, yeah, don't recommend. 0 out of 5 stars.
That's fascinating.
Sometimes ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when you're already paying $150 a night for a room, and I don't want to know where I'm sleeping. Just wake me in the morning. That's fascinating. Really fascinating. So how do you think that translates to the nighttime then? Is it because that things fluoresce in the night as well, even without that UV?
I think it's a light frequency that is still emitted during nighttime.
Okay.
Like maybe it comes off the ambient starlight or the moon, whatever, but it seems to be a light frequency that is definitely being utilized by old nocturnal creatures. And with Sasquatch mostly being described as a nocturnal being, that seemed to make sense.
Mm-hmm.
By hobby, I also collect a lot of rocks, and I learned about a really fun one called the Ultraviolet. And the Ultraviolet, when you emit UV light onto it, will fluoresce like a burning ember of a coal plucked right out of a fire. That are like bright orange.
Right. I think you posted that in our Discord, didn't you?
Yeah.
A long time ago, yeah.
I wear one around my neck all the time.
That's fascinating.
But it caught me thinking about all these gift sites that Sasquatch do. People will leave out food or marbles or whatever, and they're often gifted rocks in return. Oh. Now, my theory is I think these rocks hold significance to the Sasquatch. Okay. I don't think they're just a mundane, everyday rock. Sure. They may look like it, but if you emit UV light onto it, I'm sure those ones will fluoresce.
Oh, that's fascinating. Wow.
So they're either going to look red or orange or green. There's a lot of different fluorescent colors out of rocks that you can get.
Sure.
And then when you hear the stories of them throwing rocks at people, they're always little tiny pebbles.
Right.
Imagine if those glowed.
Right.
So you're throwing a rock, it would look like a tracer bullet. Now that takes it from, hey, get out of here, to a, hey, this is kind of fun. Let's see if we can trick these humans.
Right. Oh, that's fascinating. Right? Yeah, because, I've always considered it an intimidation thing, but, I've also heard stories that apparently came from First Nations where children would throw rocks sometimes and the rocks would come back and they would throw them again and they would have this kind of game with some unseen being in the bushes. But, and maybe they're able to ascertain or learn something about the people that interact with them, through examining the stone after the person's thrown it. I don't know. I mean, I imagine that, as far as their natural senses are concerned, like, consider we have dogs that can smell, parts per million of blood, of drugs, they can, their noses are so acute and so refined. And they, what does a dog do when it meets another dog? It smells its butt, it's like, there's so much going on with animals and scent. So, there's talk of dogs being able to smell disease, like cancer and being able to tell when people are going to have seizures long before.
I think some of that might even play into the ultraviolet. So when a dog, like a service dog, for instance, like say you're about to have a stroke, think of an octopus that is feeling pain. It just is flashing light and curling itself up, right? Okay. But it's emitting all that pain signal as light. Imagine we do the same thing. And your dog is seeing that and smelling your problem at the same time.
Sure.
It's a both and.
Right. Oh, that's true. That could be a whole nother level to that. That's a great point. Because I think there is possibly, if there's an imbalance in the body, then of course our body processes would be skewed and perhaps that's what they're cueing into as well as on the scent variations. But you're right. If there's a visual element to that as well, like, let's say it's some form of bone cancer or something. Well, you were saying that the bones fluoresce, but maybe in some people they don't, and that's when they have those underlying conditions, or whatever.
Right.
So it's fascinating. It's funny that, given those potentials, it's funny that there isn't, and maybe there is, but medical research going on to help diagnose problems based on, the ability to perceive these light waves that we don't normally perceive. And maybe there is, but if there is, I'm not familiar.
Fringe doctors out there that actually will use sunlight as a healing tool.
Sure.
Because in essence, we are essentially just like plants, although we utilize minerals slightly differently. Okay. So we almost need to photosynthesize like a plant. And in our mundane human existence, we don't often do that, working indoors all the time or in our houses watching TV under blue light conditions and all this and that.
Putting together podcasts,
We take ourselves out of the natural.
Yeah.
And don't apply the same rules to ourselves as what everything else does.
Sure.
And we came from nature, and so those rules still apply to us. And I think that's why we run into a lot of these health problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. There's any number of factors. Maybe, with our living contrary to our natural tendencies, maybe that's really creating a weird, strange, odd light for everything else.
Probably.
Can you imagine? Maybe we're supposed to be a certain color. And of course, you talk when people like recovering addicts or alcoholics and stuff, they have to go through a whole series of transitions physically, just physically, to get their body working the way it's supposed to, because these strange chemicals have been interacting so weirdly with their systems and creating all this imbalance and stuff. So, what do they recommend? Clean eating, lots of vegetables and sunlight, fresh air, getting out, moving your body, all those things that'll help to reset our physical processes. So, yeah, I imagine we're probably just a ugly disco mess.
Probably. Think about the description of Sasquatch's skin color.
Mm-hmm.
It's that charcoaly gray, ashy color.
Yeah.
And that would indicate a lot of melanin in the skin.
Mm-hmm.
So their light absorption factor would be huge.
Sure.
So if they are emitting light from their eyes, that is not beyond the realm of possibility.
Mm.
Especially if their eyes are so much bigger than ours.
Mm-hmm.
It might just be catching the light within and reflecting it out the eyes.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I've
but if it is just eye shine itself, it could just be like a mirror catching the UV light that it's gathering around the surrounding environment, and that is what is actually shining, is the UV.
Yeah. Well, the other interesting thing is that, with eye shine, since we're talking about that, and I can't pretend to know. Biofluorescence and stuff is not something I claim to know much about, and bioluminescence outside of the insect world.
It's a complicated subject.
Oh, I can only imagine. But it is interesting to me that I've spoken to several witnesses. One gentleman, his name was Kevin Keeney. He was from actually the Mogollon Ridge, where he investigates in Arizona. And he talked about how when he goes out doing his investigations, he will sit in absolute darkness. And he's had them come up and no lights, absolute no light anywhere. It's like pitch black. But he'll see the eyes, the red eyes. And he talks about them being red. Now, conversely, I've heard several witnesses that have witnessed eye shine from what they believe to be Sasquatch or what they observe to be Sasquatch. I don't know, specifically which in each case, but sometimes it's a golden color, and, that's like a golden or yellowish. So I'm wondering, is that potentially some distinct quality to possibly different types of this same branch of hominid or hominoid, whatever, they are, or is there something being indicated in that eye color that is important? Now, legendarily, the red eye shine is supposed to be a real bad sign. Like,
Yeah.
don't mess with those. If you see the golden ones, those are good, but the red ones, stay away from. They are, very aggressive. So it makes you wonder if that fluorescence is kind of as you indicated with the cuttlefish. It's like, is it some
indicative of emotion?
Right. Is it being channeled somehow through their physiology and indicating with the eye shine?
I mean, they might even be doing it unknowingly. I mean,
Sure.
It might just be second nature to them.
Right. It might be just the same as like knitting your brow when you're pissed, Like,
Yeah,
you don't
exactly.
really think about doing it, but everybody does it. It's like, and that look in your eyes. Well, maybe, yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, even outside of Sasquatch, you get the same stories with Dogman and even stories about orbs in the forest.
Sure.
One of the main attributes of orb stories is that these glowing balls of light don't emit a shine onto the surrounding area very much.
Right. It's a very localized phenomenon. Yep.
Very localized light, very much like UV light. So UV is not a very bright light. So these balls could even be made out of UV, and they would not illuminate the surrounding area very much.
What do you think of the plasma idea, though? I don't know if it was some form of plasma. And maybe the plasma is some sort of emitter of UV. I don't know. I'm just
Maybe.
throwing ideas out there. I don't know.
It's quite possible, but I mean, plasma would most likely show up in a stormy environment, correct?
Yeah, or geological, or any.
Yeah,
Well,
or geological.
Yeah. There's the geological functions. People talk about plasma balls around earthquakes and such, but I don't
See
think.
them dancing around the treetops,
Yeah.
almost like an intelligent
Yes.
design to them.
Moving with purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to be something else.
I agree. I'm with you on that 100%. I don't buy into, well, it's all just, these anomalous plasma balls, kind of like ball lighting. It's probably a real phenomenon. I'm not doubting that, but I just think
Every time?
yeah.
Yeah.
Is that really how prevalent it is? Now, I'm not pretending I know what it is, but I don't think that we can just jump on board of, whatever explanation some, scientific mind throws out there. I think that's premature because it's not really testable, right? In the scientific model, I mean, if you can't test a hypothesis, it's about as valuable as, a kid, making a crayon monster at that point. It just doesn't, if it's not testable, if it's not able to be measured and weighed, and
Repeatable.
we don't have those technologies yet to do that. But I like the direction you're going with this because, and I'm encouraged to hear that there's a group or at least an effort by a number of people to explore this possibility, because throughout the course of our discussion so far, you've really taught me a whole bunch of things that I didn't know. I just had no idea. But I think it's a fascinating idea because, as you mentioned, it's already being demonstrated in nature all of the time and is observable and testable in the, in the interaction with the bees and the flowers and God only.
Very good resource to try to get a visual representation of how this works is David Attenborough's series called Life in Color.
Oh, okay.
And he kind of delves into how animals see in different spectrums. It's not always just UV either. Like, we got snakes that can see in infrared. We have crabs that see in polarized light. So you see almost like a photo negative of the world.
Oh, interesting.
Like fiddler crabs. So they're waving their claws on the beach, and their red claws would get lost in this sea of other crabs and the rocks even. But as soon as you flip everything to polarized light, those crab claws, when they're waving them, stick out like a sore thumb.
Interesting. Wow.
And you can even take the reverse of that and look at a peacock shrimp. and they're voracious predators and whatnot. But the eye spot on their tail, when you take the non-polarized light shines like a flashlight. So when they stick their tail at the entrance to their burrow, they're putting it out as a warning sign, like, hey, stay away, this place is occupied. So it's not always just the one frequency. There's all these other ones around as well.
Oh, that's incredible. Okay.
But, going out at night with the UV flashlight, the world really does look like the movie Avatar. Everything is just crazy, wild colors. And I think at one point in time, humanity probably did have the ability to see an ultraviolet light. Because when you take a step back and you look at hippie culture, when they're doing like hallucinogenic mushrooms and whatnot.
Sure.
And you see all those posters in the smoke shops.
The black light ones, yeah.
They're all the same colors that are being expressed in nature. So where did that come from?
Oh, sure. Okay.
Right? How did we come to that conclusion that this is how these drugs make us see when nature's the one that's presenting those colors all of the time? I think what it is doing is connecting synapses in our brain that don't normally connect. And I think sometimes that's how we see these cryptids and supernatural beings, is it might just be a simple synapse connecting that doesn't normally connect. And that may be why person A sees it, but person B doesn't.
That's interesting. I had a discussion with Mike Ricksecker on a recent podcast, and we were talking about, frequency and such like that, and certainly light is a frequency, so that makes sense. And what are we capable of perceiving? Now, I think it's a pretty well-known fact that our brains are actually taking in millions of pieces of information per second, but discarding so much of it and just feeding us what I guess it's been conditioned to feed us, and
manageable bits.
Yeah, the manageable bits, or the important bits that deal with, things we're working on or functioning with or whatever. Now, is that also translatable then? Like, is it a deconditioning from our natural state? Because oftentimes through the course of the shows, we've talked about kids and how they are capable of having full conversations, seeing and experiencing apparitions, and talking and playing with them over, months or weeks or whatever. And to the point that the parents are convinced they're seeing and experiencing a personality that they adults can't. But then that generally changes through the growth of the child, that they will hit a point where they outgrow it. And is that the deconditioning process of just growing up and focusing on this physical world that we're a part of, whereas maybe their brains as small children aren't throwing away as much. They're sucking in everything, so they're seeing things that are there and are represented in their reality, but we've long since quit seeing those things, or stopped, or just ignored those things for so long that we can't see them anymore. And so let's
say we were just like Sasquatch, and you're able to see in the ultraviolet light during the nighttime, and that's how you protected your family.
Mm-hmm.
Then we got into the habit of having a fire going all the time. Yeah. So you're relying on the firelight, and so your brain gets lazy.
Sure.
So it's almost like an adaptation out of the abilities that we would naturally have.
Mm.
And now that we live in a modern world where we have lights at our whim, we really don't need to be able to see in the ultraviolet. I mean,
sure.
How fantastic would it be if we could, and we could see all these hidden messages in nature and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But we're focused so much on the human existence that we negate the life of everything else around us.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I think in order to understand something that we can't, like Sasquatch, we have to first take a step back and look at the whole picture on the puzzle box, not focus just on the one puzzle piece.
Right. Yeah.
Learn how everything works. And then it's that ecological web. So if something like this works like that, then maybe this does too.
Sure. And interestingly enough, one theme continually comes up in Sasquatch encounter stories is if you really want to piss them off, shine a flashlight at them. And I imagine that, Sasquatch are obviously seen during the day, and they can function just fine in daylight as well, although they seem to prefer the night for this very reason. But maybe flooding with that flashlight kind of knocks them out of that ability to perceive it for a while. Like, we often talk about our night vision, but maybe their night vision is, that's how they survive. And if they get a bright light in their eyes, it might be, 10 minutes before they're able to go back to, perceiving that correctly or whatever. So maybe it hurts too when their eyes are adjusted to that darkness. Maybe
especially if their eyes are like 4 times the size of ours.
Yeah, and so much
that's letting in a lot of light.
Yeah, and so much more sensitive to light. I mean, I've had spotlight shine in my eyes in the dark, and it hurts. I mean, or like when somebody takes a picture of you and that flash, and all you see is that blue dot for about 20 minutes. It's like,
yeah, exactly. How are you supposed to hunt the deer then?
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to be hungry. So, it's very fascinating stuff. I tell you what, brother, this has been an incredible journey, and you've brought a lot to the table. Obviously you're going to have to come back because there's so much more to uncover with this, but thanks for making this happen today, man. This is great.
Absolutely. I mean, it's always fun talking about this stuff. It's a real passion of mine. And I think the more awareness that we can bring to this, the more it helps everyone do their research.
Amen, brother. And the whole idea is just share information. And to all of you out there listening, if this sounds like something that you can get behind, great. If not, just let it go. But I think this idea exchange is important for all of us to move the needles forward. So, I appreciate you moving my needle forward, Chucky.
No problem.
All right, brother. Thanks for coming on.
No problem, Brent. Glad to be here.
Get out! Guys, thank you so much for joining us here on tonight's show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please feel free to follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Paranormal Portal Radio, as well as finding us on Twitter. We're on Twitter at Paranormal Portal, PORTL, and we'd love to have you stop by our YouTube page and subscribe and check out our shows there. We got hundreds of shows, Journeys into the Paranormal Portal, so I hope you'll check it out, guys. We're over there at youtube.com/Paranormal Portal, so hope to see you guys soon. We'll be back, of course, for more podcasts in the coming days. So we love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice, take care of each other, help each other out, find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can.